Dear ladies beyond flying, welcome to the 31st Aviation Women panel from Ladies Beyond Flying. My name is Daniel Stecher, Vice President, Business Development, IBS Software, and it's a big honor to have today Erin Lear, entrepreneur from the United States, with us. I think your last name might ring your bell, and she is talking today about how to make the world a better place. Erin, we are very grateful that we are having you with us. So please let us have an enjoyable 45, 60 minutes. And please, ladies, if you have a question during the presentation, just raise your hand and I will help Erin to moderate a little bit. Stage is yours, Erin.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So, making the world a better place. I'm sure we all have some ideas of what that looks like. And in aviation and aerospace in particular, there's a lot of things on the horizon, bringing on a new era into aviation. I'm sure you guys saw my last name. I am the granddaughter of Bill Lear, the inventor of the Lear jet, amongst other amazing inventions. And I have been basically researching in the research and development stage for operating a pilot academy with the use of electric airplanes. We are deep in research of it. We are heavily reliant on the E-Flyer, which is the first plane to be certified here in the United States as the first electric aircraft. Now we have other companies here like Pipistrel, but they are experimental aircraft. They are a good company, but they are, sorry for the speaker in the background, but they are, they don't go more than 40 minutes in the air before they have to come back down. So it doesn't really make sense when you're looking at a training program for pilots. So not only do we have that we're working on, but I can't say too much, but we want to resurrect Learjet. Bombardier basically announced last year that they are shutting down any kind of new operations of Learjet, but they are still manufacturing in Wichita, Kansas. So one of my dreams to make the world a better place is to resurrect the Lear name in the aviation space. And we have some creative ideas on how to do that. I'm sure everybody's maybe read a little about electric airplanes and the benefits, but just to give you a kind of breakdown on some of the key points is that they are less noisy. So anything in residential areas is the airports in residential areas. This actually helps create less of a noise factor. In addition, it's sustainable. So you're not pumping out, a bunch of jet fuel into the environment. So the carbon footprint is less. And also, if we start with the two-seaters, it will help reduce the cost to operate to get your pilot's license. So those are some of the key bulletin points. And I think, and a lot of the questions that people might have is, when is this going to happen? So part of the issue is getting it certified by the FAA here in the States. And it's taking quite a bit of time. I know for a fact that the E-Flyer is moving right along. They just got some certification for the training program, some of the maintenance issues for the E-Flyer. So the FAA is moving, but slowly. And we're looking at probably another year to 2 years before the first production of the E-Flyer. And that will be the starting point, in my opinion, for this new wave and new era in aviation. So with that said, that's where I see it going. And from that starting point, I see there being a wave of, there's all sorts of other aircrafts like Joby and Archer that are taking on the VTOL space. And there's more information that I have and opinions I have about those companies. I think they're an amazing invention, but the VTOL space is going to take longer. And we need stuff now. So we need to figure out a solution to help the pilot issue that we're seeing and facing. And I think a great way to also help make the world a better place, or at least shift things, is to entice females and minorities. And how to do that, I think a great way is to involve the e-flyer, and some of the programs that we would be able to get with a electric plane school, and making it possible for not only females and minorities, but everyone to have this kind of like new exciting like ignited fire to start getting your pilot's license, and then to do it on an electric plane is ideal. And of course there's other hurdles there to accomplish. But with that said, I think it's a good starting point. And then there's another factor would be to also help these pilots get certified also for the VTOL companies that are coming into that space. So there's all sorts of things that are, I think, on the horizon. It's just a matter of time.
And talking about hurdles, you said one of the important next steps is, of course, the certification of FAA. So which are the main challenges? And from the other perspective, are you having a certain tailwind now from the authorities because they know exactly about this pilot shortage thing? So is your ambition exactly also a catalyst for them to speed up the certification process because you help this pilot shortage topic to be solved, maybe?
Right. Yes. I think the FAA is just, they have to do their due diligence, and they have to go through a series of steps. We're bringing on a new airplane into the space, which creates a lot of questions, and it's going to be important for them to take each step in small strides. I would also say COVID and the pandemic was a big factor in slowing it down. So not only does the FAA take a long time, but now throw a pandemic into the mix and it's like double the time, which makes it hard for companies like startups like the e-flyer to sustain while everything's, in a process of being reviewed and looked at, and then delays. It's not an easy process. And so it's a difficult time, but it's a great time to shift into these wonderful opportunities to make the world a better place and less carbon footprint, more sustainable, all that kind of stuff.
And do you sense more support from investors and from the public and the authorities, or exactly the opposite? Because with your role and let's say having a male-dominated industry around you, so is it pro or is it rather another hurdle to overcome?
So, can you explain that one more time?
Yeah, it's because you, as a leader, you want to bring in innovation to the industry, and of course there are other competitors, and they are primarily male-dominated. And now having this Ladies Beyond Flying group, we are of course interested to learn from you. Which are maybe which environment are you facing? Is it in favor of a female founder investor? Is it rather now a burden? Also, let's say your family background, all that stuff. So is it helpful or rather a challenge?
I think it's a little mixture of both. I think being a woman in aviation has its challenges. I think it's a great opportunity, though. Now we're seeing a lot of different industries with females as leaders in those industries take charge. And we're in a different timing now where we're seeing more and more of that. So I just see opportunities left and right being a female. But I will say, for our pilot school, one of the ways to help women navigate through a predominantly male industry is to provide support courses that you wouldn't normally get in normal pilot schools, right? So being able to basically make communities where females can go to and have even mentorship programs to be able to lean on their fellow female pilots and any females in the aviation space.
Are there questions from the audience?
Erin, I have a question. I'm speaking to you from Vancouver, Canada, and I have a background with Lufthansa system as a service provider for airline industry. But back in September last year, I was in an intimate group with our Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, and I see a lot of interest from Canada to move towards such projects that you're speaking about. Have you approached Canadians?
I have not approached Canadians, but I think that it would be great. I'm sure it's just a matter of time before everybody gets on board. Once we start to see the benefits and the value of like the pilot schools using electric airplanes, we'll be able to see there's a 5-fold reduction cost to operate. That's just a rough number right now. I'm sure things might change, give or take, but that is the projection. So I think if Canada can get on board, it'd be great.
It's cheaper to operate up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Great.
Other questions from the audience? Sharina,
Erin,
you switched on your camera, which is an indication you have a question.
Yeah, I thought I'd ask. So, Erin, did you say that the type rating is done, or it's in the process with the FAA?
It's in the process with the FAA,
okay.
but they've let me tell you the exact programs that the FAA has passed. Give me 1 second here. So yeah, it's the motor landing gear and testing program. The motor landing gear and testing program. So that's what they have certified with the FAA for the E-Flyer so far.
Okay. And then if a pilot is certified on this, would they accept it as a certification for or as a step for other types?
My thoughts on that would be it is predominantly the training that, and then there will be a type rating for certain other planes. But yeah,
okay.
It's mainly just for training, getting the pilot familiar, spending less hours in the air. Or more hours in the air, spending less money to get the training that's needed.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
No
I'm
further
all
questions.
ears.
Everybody's speechless.
I'd love to hear everybody else's opinion on where they think the space is going with electric planes and VTOL aircraft. If anyone wants to chime in, like if they have any ideas on time frame or opinions on it.
I think from what you said, if especially the costs go down, that then definitely helps in training more people. Because one of the barriers to more pilots training was the costs of entry into service, right? As a person. So I think that will definitely help, and we're going to have a shortage, right? If when travel picks up fully, we'll start to have a shortage of pilots again, and this should certainly help. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Erin has a question to Erin. Oh, no, sorry, Erin. Continue.
I was just going to say that I don't see what other direction we could go in. Like, what other solutions are there? I think that if we start really honing in on female pilots, minority pilots, and making it an available option that's not so, tantalizing in terms of cost, then that's really one of the solutions.
Erin from Canada. Erin, you
Yes?
have a question? No. Erin
Oh.
from Canada. Okay. Erin raised her hand but has no question. So my opinion is that I think in this eVTOL topic, I think the biggest challenge is this noise factor. If I'm not understanding it incorrectly, because all these propellers and rotors are somehow making noise, and the question is, how is the public accepting that within urban areas suddenly a lot of flying taxis across houses and so on? So that will be the one challenge. So I think maybe the transporting cargo might be the first deployment method. So I see it takes more time in the urban area, and it will be potentially maybe building bridges in rural areas where pharmaceutical services can be brought to remote areas, and instead of using road traffic. So that might come pretty early, because also potentially from the risk factor, it's lower than you have housing areas where people have maybe some more concerns. So that's my guess.
So, Daniel, you're saying that you think that the VTOLs are going to come sooner than 5 years?
Yes.
Okay. So I hope that is true, because short point-to-point distance trips would really help any congested areas, especially in big towns and all that. My fear, though, is I've heard their burn rate, believe me, I love Joby, I love Archer. Their burn rate a year is obscene. I've heard, and I don't know the exact numbers, but you're well within the hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and so it's concerning with where we're at. I would really hope that they have enough money to sustain those companies to get them off the ground. Now, I know Uber is definitely on the forefront of being one of those companies to incorporate VTOL, short point-to-point distance, urban air mobility, an opportunity there. But I know that for sure with the FAA that the eFlyer is the first in line. There's other certifications that are issues and hurdles that companies like Joby and Archer are facing with the FAA. So.
It might be that it will not be the US where it will be the first place. So some other companies push hard for the Olympic Games in Paris. So it's next year already. And I think the French president is trying to make this happen. You are also hearing from other vendors or suppliers in Singapore. So it might be it's not the United States which will be the trendsetter, but once it's available somewhere else, it might be also speed up the process in the United States. So
yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. That'll be exciting to see that day.
On the other hand, do you think the pilot unions are also a decisive factor in all that? Do you believe the pilot unions are in favor of all these business models, or this is one of the factors which is maybe slowing down decision making?
I'm really not sure, but my gut tells me that this is really good for aviation and will help people get maybe more excited about getting into the union. And I know that, or I think that you can just get a type rating, to fly these particular aircrafts.
There's one question from Satya.
Hi, Erin. Thank you so much for all of that. If I'm understanding correctly, is this regarding the electric planes? Is that just for training, or is it wider and bigger than that in terms of passenger travel?
Sure. So the eFlyer is starting off with a 2-seater, and then they also have a 4-seater, and then they also have what's called the eFlyer 800, and that's more of a 9 to 10 person passenger plane. Mm-hmm. So with the electric planes, we're looking at growing into it here in the States, but then you have companies, in Europe like Alice that are already, have designs. I know also Amp Air in California also has a design for passenger travel, and to also bounce off of that, Lear meaning me, we want to bring into the market an electric airplane as well. So I think it's just really a matter of timing for all these other companies to kind of jump on board and go, okay, so the first one's out, it works, it's making, people a lot of money and reducing carbon footprints and all sorts of benefits there. And so it'll be like wildfire, I believe.
Yeah. Two thoughts coming up in my mind.
Okay.
The first one is off the back of a point that was already made in terms of the cost. So if the cost comes down significantly, of course, the barriers to entry in terms of the amount of people that can get access to being able to get trained up, that makes it more accessible to them, which means you get more trained people, more trained pilots, right? But of course, that always has an impact on wages in terms of you get a larger workforce, and longer term, if you've got more people than demand, of course, that means lower wages as well. That's sort of one point, probably longer term, I reckon, because we also identified in the conversation that perhaps there's a shortage, so we actually need to catch up with the amount of people that are readily available and trained. And the second idea that was floating around my mind was, once it becomes more common ground in terms of electric planes, I suppose that infrastructure is really important. And where I'm coming from is, so we have a Tesla, so we have a electric car, and for ages we debated whether to go fully electric or hybrid. And this is coming from somebody who had a diesel car, right? So we went from diesel to then fully electric. And now they're everywhere. Where we live, I can't go down the street for seeing 2 more Teslas and people waving at each other because they're like, "Ooh, Tesla." So, but the infrastructure had to catch up with that to be able to support that system, right? So, when I travel 2 hours up north, I need to charge myself up to be able to get back down again. And I'm just thinking as the comparison for the planes, right? So you're going to need to go somewhere, but of course you're going to need to get serviced, or something will go wrong, or something will need fixing. And so I suppose it's also that other element of setting up the infrastructure to be able to support the growth of this.
Sure. So to touch on your first point, to offset some of the costs, and to keep the wages up, one thing comes to my mind, which is building out an infrastructure with these companies to hire the pilots out of the schools that they're trained on these planes before, and have a creative way for them to pay back that money within that company, you know, after they've been with the company for a year or two, they can, like, there's some sort of grant, like, you know, $50,000. So that'll help at least with that. And then to touch on your second point, I think I totally hear you with the Teslas and the charging, you know, frequently. I really truly believe the electric planes will be the best first and foremost for training. And there are batteries that they swap out of the E-Flyer two-seater plane. So it's literally a quick 15-minute process to swap out the battery, especially if somebody's training, which, by the way, I don't know who all on here is a pilot, but I know for myself that I don't necessarily want to be training for more than 2 hours up in the air before my mind's already kind of like, okay, I need a break. And I think that I'm like a sponge for those first 2 hours, and then things kind of start to dwindle. It's a lot, you know. So I think that it's a good time frame to do the 2 hours and then come down, swap out the battery. If somebody wants to go for another 2 hours after that, great. If they can handle it, depends on, you know, who you are and what you're capable of. And but yeah, I think that as far as the battery swap, that's a great idea for the short point-to-point distances and for training programs. When we start to get into the urban air mobility and the, you know, carrying passengers factor, I know some of the bigger planes go longer than 2 hours. So I know they're looking at, you know, obviously increasing that amount of time as much as possible, depending on the size of the aircraft. Oh, one other thing to touch on is I do know that they're also talking about installing, like Tesla, you know, all these charging stations at airports. And that's for crafts that would be capable to plug in and charge and not do a battery swap out. I don't know what that looks like for some of the bigger planes quite yet, but I know for the training planes, the battery swap out is kind of ideal to keep the school up and running without having to plug the plane in for, you know, an hour and then lose that hour in the day. So you can kind of just keep rotating the battery and the students and keep the plane flying.
Yeah, Volocopter has exactly the same approach. I believe this is exactly the most clever, because you have a high utilization and no wait time to recharge the battery. So I think that will be a decisive factor for the success. Erin from Canada, you raised your hand. You have switched it off. You have the question?
I did. I took it down because I was curious about the infrastructure, but you've answered it. The only other thing, and I don't really have a nicely formed question, I'm really curious about this idea of this just being more appealing to women. And I don't know if that's true or not. I have 3 daughters. I work in tech, and I was at an aviation event last week where I was easily able to count the 15 women in the room. And you asked about International Women's Day. I counted them, and then I went and met them all because it was easy. So we've got a gap, and that's nothing to say there was lovely men in the room. This was not anything against them. It's just we don't have that reflection and diversity. I'm really curious about how, I don't know, is this an opportunity for us to encourage women to do something different? Can we really target it because it's new? And is that somehow appealing? And I'm thinking of my own daughters, and what would it take to get them to try this? Like, how do I, like, anyways, I don't, as I said, I don't have a nice coherent question here. I just think when you bring something new to the market, and our youth are so interested in sustainability and all of that, I think this is a moment where you could probably tap into a different group in a way you didn't before. That's
right.
I don't know if you have a thought on that.
Yeah,
but.
yeah, I do actually. So as far as motivating, you know, or enticing people to get involved or at least take their first flight, you know, and see if it's something that interests them or deters them away from it. I think just so with Birdie Academy, our whole idea was to do this massive marketing campaign, like on social media platforms and stuff like that. and I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Major League of Their Own, but it was like the very first female softball baseball team. And if you kind of think about like that trend, the way that rolled out, that's kind of like the marketing strategy in a way, just to kind of give you an idea we would want to touch on. And then just the creative marketing ways, not only with the e-flyer, but having females in control, in the lead, and doing it creatively is one of the ideas that I had. Now, the other idea is to have TV shows or something like Netflix series where there's female pilots, that kind of stuff. I think really gets in people's heads and gets people inspired. So I actually been talking to a few different producers who are working on projects like this. So it seems to be slowly creeping into reality.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Are you having some open positions at the moment for Ladies Beyond Flying, or is it too early to talk about some job openings?
We're not quite there. So we are working on a couple different other projects right now, because Birdie is heavily reliant on the e-flyer. We thought we were going to go into production 2 years ago. So we had to kind of take a step back and reorganize, reconnect with, or reorganize and make sure that we are on the right path. Oh, did it just bounce off?
No. I'm just showing your background and all that stuff.
Okay, sorry. So we have to come back to like setting this up appropriately and the right way, in a timely manner with the e-flyer. So we had to take a step back in order to take a couple steps forward, if that makes any sense.
Good, but I think you gave a wonderful introduction how you consider making the world a better place. I think Ladies Beyond Flying are going to follow you now, and want to see how this is coming to reality. I will also see how we can support this, because I think I like the idea, and it would be good maybe if then later in the course of the evolution, Ladies Beyond Flying might really join your team and help you to become the successful game changer in aviation, and that you really succeed to make the world a better place. So thank you very much for this fantastic talk. You were asking, do we have a pilot in the session? We don't have one, but I can tell you the next presenter of Ladies Beyond Flying is a pilot. It's Noreen, Canada. So we have a very strong Canadian group here in Ladies Beyond Flying. And she is going to talk on 18th April about equity, diversity, and inclusivity. We need to talk about the differences. And Erin, if you can join the session, we would be again very grateful to have you with us.
I would love that. Oh, I just saw somebody's question pop up. Just so you know, I just got married, so my name on LinkedIn is Erin Lear Loughan, Loughan. Okay,
so then we will consider this for the next time.
Yeah.
And I had something to add. Hi, Kristen, also from Canada, no longer in aviation. Spent 20 years at Air Canada. Erin McLennan, I don't know if we were having the same thought at the same time, but are you familiar, Erin Lear Loughan, with Tira Fraser at all?
I am not.
If you're not, you need to, and I'm strongly encouraging you to hook up with her virtually. She is the founder. She is the owner and founder of the only Indigenous woman-owned airline in Canada and possibly in the US. I'm not sure. It's called Isquayo, and something she started doing recently. She's also founded a company called Early Bird Aero, which, and I can show you those links after. Yeah, Super timely. I just became aware of it recently, although she started it a little while ago. The tagline is they aim to be the first all-electric flight training unit in Canada.
Well, that's
So,
absolutely perfect. Yes.
right? Yeah. And she is a force to be reckoned with. Tyr is actually, I don't know if anyone or everyone on the call is aware of this, but the makers of Barbie, yes, the makers of Barbie, in the last 3 years or so, it's all merging together in my head. They come out with specialty dolls, I'll call them. That's not the right term, but they came out with a Tyr doll a couple of years ago. Yeah, she's in small ways making a huge impact, and she's just a phenomenal person. They also have their own maintenance center as well, which, and just to tag on to something I'm sure you've been dealing, Erin, with venture capital issues, perhaps. So 1% in North America, I don't have the Canadian stats, but they're equally as abysmal. 1% of VC goes to Black women. The percentage that goes to European descent women is not much more. So I also want to encourage you to hook up with Tara, because I'm sure she's either has tips and tricks or, you know, people to steer away from. So I'm going to shoot you a message after that, because
yes,
I think working together could be incredible.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, I will definitely reach out.
Thank you, everybody, for joining the session. Thank you again, Erin, for making it due to all the, or also you have these disruption in your travel. But I think it's the beauty of technology. And I assume you are also now benefiting from the battery of your smartphone. You see, battery is ruling.
Yes.
It's not, you don't need fuel, you have energy power. And I think it shows that you can still make it. So thank you very much.
We're sustaining.
Please stay,
Exactly.
And please stay healthy and safe. And thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.